We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. We are at an hour of desperation.
An hour of desperation, a missing mother, an alleged ransom come and gone. Savannah Guthrie pleading to the public this morning. Plus, a change in tone. We're comparing and contrasting Guthrie's video messages and what they can possibly tell us. Also this hour, tears in the courtroom. Paul Caneiro's daughter facing him from the witness stand. How her emotional testimony could tip the scales of justice. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? This is that show that gets you all warmed up and ready to go for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. And we have a big show to start us off, my friends. Grab that cup of coffee or tea or hot water with lemon or whatever you're having this morning. It's time for my opening statement. What a painful mystery. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is as heartbreaking as it is mysterious. I told you from the start that I had my doubts about the purported ransom notes. And now Monday's deadline has come and gone. So what does that mean? Does that mean it was all bogus? Nancy Guthrie's purported kidnappers really didn't have her? We saw another heartbreaking video from Savannah Guthrie posted to her social media on Monday afternoon, asking for everyone in the public to please help. So does that ransom note and the writers behind it mean that that process turned out to be a nowhere street? You know, it seems, my friends, that there are far more questions than there are answers that we have this morning. My heart is breaking for Savannah Guthrie and everyone who loves her mom, Nancy. And I say we keep praying for that miracle for Nancy. We know here in the true crime community that sometimes people can survive horrific crimes. So let's hope and let's pray that Nancy Guthrie is a survivor. That's my opening statement on this Tuesday. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
I killed James because he would get in my way. I killed James with a subsonic .22 I stole from Cabela's. I have no regrets. I'm not mental either. I was sane when I did this.
In North Carolina, we've got the defense expected to begin in the teen killing spree sentencing for defendant Austin Thompson. Court's going to start up at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In New Jersey, we have defendant Paul Caneiro's daughter returning to the stand today around 9:30 a.m. Eastern, and we're going to revisit some key testimony from that trial later on in the show. You don't want to miss it. And in Georgia, we have the trial of the man who's accused of murdering UGA law student Tara Baker. This one was a cold case. Stood cold for many, many years, and now almost 20 years since the time of the incident, the family might be getting justice. Court's going to get underway 9 a.m. Eastern. We will go there live when it does. Right now, though, we turn to your top story this morning. Savannah Guthrie pleading for help to find her missing 84-year-old mom. An alleged ransom deadline has been missed, and now the urgent search continues this morning. Court TV's Cody Thomas has the latest from Tucson.
Good morning, Julie. Out here now in front of Annie Guthrie's house, where we did see some police activity over the weekend. But the latest update in this story, Julie, another video posted by Savannah Guthrie.
I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. No matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation.
That video coming just a while before the alleged ransom letter deadline of 5 p.m. on February 9th. So far, no updates or movement on anything to do with that. The Pima County Sheriff released a statement Monday evening saying in part, the FBI is handling all aspects related to any ransom note or notes or communications involving the Guthrie family. And Julie, it is clear that this is a grieving community, but the neighbors in this community are remaining hopeful for Nancy Guthrie's safe return alive. Julie?
All right, thanks to Cody Thomas for that early report. Right now, I want to bring in my guest analyst in the studio with me. I have private investigator JP Miller, and joining me remotely, the host of Road Patrol Live. He is outside of Nancy Guthrie's house, John DePietro. John and JP, good morning to you both. John, I'll begin with you. You're there. Tell us a bit about what you're seeing right now, please.
You know, Julie, everywhere you go, this is all anyone's talking about. This is a real rough, barren terrain. But I was speaking with law enforcement last night. Many of them echo what you think, which is that perhaps the ransom was actually bogus, that it was just some outside player trying to cash in. But as I'm standing out here, Julie Grant, it's tough to reason that someone, and remember, there's no lighting out here at all. It's very remote. The idea that someone just somehow came upon this house and removed poor Nancy, it just doesn't stand to reason. So I believe, from what I'm being told, and there is some debate inside of clashing of, you have obviously federal agents and you have locals, but there is definitely an idea that perhaps they need to go back to ground zero, which was day one. You know, many times we've covered some of these stories, the investigations take different turns, but they have to go back to that original Saturday, brought back here, then what? If in fact the ransom turned out to not be, you know, just a red herring and not actually authentic, you really have to go back to the dinner Saturday night, going into the garage, and then, you know, where does that lead us now? The investigation, it seems, is taking a different turn.
Right, John. Great points. JP, let's talk about those things. First, with the purported ransom notes. What's your opinion now this morning on those, now that the deadline has come and gone?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that I think that they're to mislead law enforcement. If they were true, what type of production have they made to show that she's alive? So it's definitely to mislead law enforcement in their investigation. And I agree, they need to go back to ground zero, work this case, new eyes, and actually put in the groundwork.
JP, do you think that investigators are in trouble now because of the timing of the release of the crime scene? They released that crime scene really quickly. Might it be contaminated?
It's definitely contaminated, absolutely contaminated. That's something that the defense would harp on if this gets to that level. There's still a lot of processing that has to go on. But yes, I mean, going back to the crime scene 3 or 4 times, opening it and closing it, allowing family members access, that is contamination.
Yes, JP. John DePietro, let me go back to you, please. Back to the facts of what happened that night with Nancy Guthrie. Law enforcement still isn't saying who dropped her off, right? At the last press conference, the sheriff is very clear to say family. We'll go with family, I believe, were his words. In terms of what else may be happening with family, we know that Annie Guthrie's home was searched. You've been out there a while now. Have you seen any of the family during the time that you've been out there doing live shots and the content creation work that you do?
I have not, Julie. They've been keeping a low profile since the first couple of days. And right now, and I think this is really important, the timeline of that night, it hasn't changed. And the law enforcement hasn't come out and said in any way. Right now, the timeline that they're still sticking on the facts is that an Uber driver came to this home behind me, picked her up at 5:30, brought her to Annie's house. It's about 11 minutes. It's very close. And then after a night of dinner and some board games, a family member brought her back here, entered through the garage went up, garage went down. You know, Julie, I'm also curious, and some different people have pointed out, was this common that she would, you know, Uber over? Uber has become, for a lot of, you know, she's 84 years old. For a lot of seniors, that's become their mode of transportation. But something that is, I just find there's a circular driveway, so you could easily pull right up to the front door. She could have gotten out right behind me, gone in. I think the element of going into the garage, maybe that was routine. Maybe that's just the way they operated, but they haven't said or veered off the Uber driver. There was some, the discussion about a vehicle they were looking for right near the sister's. But right now, that timeline is intact. And as a member of law enforcement told me last night, see if in any way that timeline, the facts that we have, the sheriff initially said the son-in-law, then he went back and just said family. Let's see if that changes in the coming days.
Right, John. JP, let's talk about interviewing the family. Whenever you work a case, do you typically start there with immediate family?
You want to start with whoever best knows the victim. Whoever has that best connection, create a motive of some sort. So yes, you want to start with the family, any type of relationship, neighbors, anyone that's close, the church community, even individuals that have had any contact with her. These are the people that you just start with. You don't start with just random people out of thin air. You start with the people that you know.
So presuming that the Guthrie family has already all been interviewed, what happens on a day like today where we see Savannah Guthrie pleading? I mean, that video last night was so heartbreaking, pleading for anyone to help with information. Do you go back to the son-in-law and the daughter, Annie, the last people with her? Where do you go today, JP?
So, I mean, I don't know what was said in those interview rooms, but definitely that's a possibility, is to re-interview these witnesses, especially now that assumingly that the law enforcement has more evidence, whether it's cell phone dumps. I've seen them walk out with Cellbrite readers and different type of equipment. So we're assuming that they have information. And if someone was not truthful, they need to go hammer down. Right,
yeah, exactly. In terms of cooperation, how key is seeing cooperation for you when you're vetting people in an investigation?
Well, typically with family members that are true victims, they cooperate. Those who typically have nothing to do. Now, some situations might be different where someone is scared to cooperate with law enforcement because they don't want to get wrongfully arrested or accused.
Right.
But the other avenue is because they're responsible.
Yes, we'll see where investigators go next. I'm being told we're going to hit our first break, but JP Miller, John DePietro, we're going to talk more to you both and bring in some other expert guests when our coverage here continues this morning on opening statements. We're comparing the Guthrie video messages, the change in the tone. What can we glean? Plus, defendant Paul Caneiro's daughter testifies for the defense. Could her testimony tip the scales of justice?
I'm Katie Caneiro, and I'm Paul Caneiro's oldest daughter. I looked at my Aunt Jen and my Uncle Keith as like second parents. Growing up, we did everything together, and it wasn't really like an extended family. It was one big family, I guess you would say. So when I was younger, we would go on vacations about once a year together.
This week,
previewing each day's proceedings in the murder trial of Dale Warner, plus the latest developments in the abduction of Nancy Guthrie.
Opening statements with Julie Grant, mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
The tragic murder of Keith Caneiro and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
We reference Nancy, a white female, 84 years of age, 5'2" medium build, Caneiro blue, ring after 2,200 hours as of yesterday. Nancy has high blood pressure, pacemaker, and cardiac issues.
As the search for Nancy Guthrie enters week 2, her children are in a, quote, hour of desperation. And the FBI still hasn't identified any suspects or persons of interest in the disappearance of the 84-year-old. But today, co-host Savannah Guthrie and her siblings seem to be engaging in communication with the suspected kidnappers through a series of social media statements.
We live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know without a doubt that she is alive and that you have her.
On Monday, Savannah released yet another video ahead of the rumored ransom deadline, describing her family's need for more answers.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. No matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation.
So what can we glean from Savannah Guthrie's change in tone? Let's talk about it with our guest. Still with me, John DePietro, J.P. Miller. Want to welcome in retired NYPD Detective Mike Alcazar and private investigator Manuel Gomez. Great to have you all on the program this morning. Manuel, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts on the change in tone. What might it mean?
Well, I believe that she finally realized that what I was saying from the very beginning, that this message was a ruse. There was no real credibility to this ransom note. And the fact is that, you know, the families realized that this is now changed because of her tone from looking at a ransom to now looking at possibly a murder case. And this is where it needs to be focused at. Kind of like what JP said, you need to go back to the beginning on this case. And that's where this needs to start. Because unfortunately, law enforcement has dropped the ball numerous times on this case.
Let's dovetail off of your point, Manuel. Where might law enforcement go today? What should they be doing today? Professor and Detective Mike Alcazar, your thoughts?
Well, we've seen in the past few days they revisited the crime scene. I'm sorry. So they probably missed something and they think they're going to have to go back there and look at it. So they're scouring the area. They're looking at our backyard. They're looking at that septic tank manhole because that thing was used as a possibility. A human body could have been secreted there. You know, when you're creating a crime scene, and I know the gents will agree, you have to create a crime scene as large as possible and process evidence throughout that whole crime scene. And then when you recovered evidence, you can always make it smaller. And I think they made that mistake, right? They didn't make the crime scene as big as possible, and now they're revisiting it. It's already been contaminated by other people, family members walking through it. So, yeah, they're going to have to start all over again from ground zero.
Right, Mike. J.P. Miller, on that point, talk to me a little bit, please, about some of the things that you think investigators need to be doing around Nancy Guthrie's property.
So I think it'd be smart to go back to looking at these LPRs again.
What's that for?
The license plate readers.
License plate readers,
Then you're looking for vehicles and you're keying on different individuals during this time frame, the month before, 2 months before, 6 months before if possible. They need to be then looking at anything on the cell site data. I've been saying that they need to go to the basics. These are common practices in law enforcement nowadays. They need to be looking at that.
Cell site data, what is that?
So the cell phone towers that are around the area, there's over 41 just in this 3-mile radius of this neighborhood. If they can pinpoint different phone numbers that shouldn't be operating or who lives there, they can be ruling people out. They can also, if that doesn't work out or they have different suspects that are any information they've obtained from interviews, they can get iCloud information, cell phones. We've already know that they've collected a lot of cell phones in this case just by the interactions that we've seen with the Cellbrite readers coming in and out.
I think that could be really, really key. I want to go to John DePietro next. John, so there where you are outside of Nancy Guthrie's home. You have been reporting there the last few days. Tell me about how close the home is to any main roads where we may have those license plate readers like J.P. Miller was just talking about.
It's very desolate. I mean, the Catalina Hills, Julie, it's beautiful, but you have to know where you're going. There's no street lights, as people have talked about. It's very, very secluded. All the homes are about, a 1 acre property, at least $1 million. I believe, Julie, I also want to mention that I think the pressure is going to start to mount on the sheriff for when is the next press briefing going to be. The only one that seemingly has been communicating the past few days has been Savannah Guthrie. The sheriff came out. He initially did a flurry of interviews. He was everywhere, and then he misspoke a couple times. The last briefing was last Thursday. I also think it's interesting, yesterday, the FBI put out a statement, but then also the sheriff's office put out a statement. Are they on the same page? When is the next press briefing? Where do things stand? I think a lot of pressure is going to start to mount as more media arrives of when is the next communication in person going to be from the sheriff.
Yeah, those are great questions, John. And the question you raised about who's running this show. Manuel Gomez, who do you think is running the show, and who should be running the show?
Well, I don't think the Pima County Sheriff should be running the show because they've already showed to be incompetent, in my professional opinion. I think the FBI should be running the show on this case. The fact of the matter is, like JP said, when it comes to the cell towers, it will show you what phone numbers were in that area at the time of the abduction, so we can eliminate what number was there. The chances of that perpetrator having a cell phone on him, I would say is better than 95%. But the other thing that we need to do now that this is being considered really as a murder case is that they need to expand the crime scene, start looking in these areas, let's say within a 1 or 2 mile radius, and see, I hate to say this, but if the body is located in any of these ditches. Got to remember, this is a hard terrain, but it's covered with tons of wadis, tons of pits, so many locations you could put. We need to get the cadaver dogs out there. We need to start looking for, unfortunately, a body.
Yes, yes, Manuel. I would love to see the dogs brought back out. We know we have that video we saw that Fox News caught of the investigators looking in that manhole, looking at the septic tank on Nancy Guthrie's property. I believe that was done on Sunday, if I have my dates correctly. We're in day 9 today. Mike Alcazar, tell us where you would be going if you were on the ground working this case with the FBI.
I think Manuel pretty much said everything. Go back there with the cadaver dogs, revisit anybody that's been in the area, even possibly go to the neighbor's property, right? The neighbor's property probably has septic tanks too that they can see if anybody had access to. So they have to check everything out. They got to dump the towers. And like JP said, you got to dump the towers even days, weeks before. We found that very useful in the Koberger case. Like, Koberger didn't have his phone that day when he committed those homicides, but days before, they tracked him driving around the area. So I think that'll be very useful.
Yeah, definitely. JP Miller, you were talking about going back through quite a window of time, right? You were saying, when you look at cell site data, you were saying like 6 months back. Why so far back?
So you want to create a pattern or show a pattern from an individual, whether that's in their normal routine. If someone steps out of that normal routine, that could be a red flag. If they're maintaining this regularity month after month, day after day, week after week, then typically they're not a suspect. Okay.
How about with the license plate readers? How big of a perimeter are we looking at?
I mean, I would be looking at it everywhere from the neighborhood to downtown Tucson, ideally for that critical window of that time frame of the actual abduction beforehand and after. If you have to expand it, once you start narrowing down vehicles, that's what you expect. So when you have like a good list of suspect vehicles, a good description of whoever's involved, then you can broaden it out and see where that vehicle has gone. Because right now, we're past like multiple weeks, she could be anywhere in the world.
Right.
I mean, you could travel South America, Mexico, Canada, anywhere.
That's a great point. We don't even know that she's still here in the United States. Quite frankly, we don't. Excellent points from our power panel. J.P. Miller, John DePietro, Mike Alcazar, Manuel Gomez. Stand by, kindly, please. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, the search for Nancy Guthrie entering week number 2. What happened to the beautiful 84-year-old? Plus.
And at that time, my dad started screaming and crying that my uncle's house was on fire. Sorry. So I wanted to make sure they were okay.
Emotional testimony in the courtroom coming from Paul Caneiro's daughter. We'll have that for you when we come back.
We saw some things at the home that were concerning to us. We believe now, after we processed that crime scene, that we do in fact have a crime scene, that we do in fact have a crime. We know she didn't just walk out of there. She did not leave on her own. Nancy Guthrie is of great sound mind. This is not a dementia related. She is as sharp as a tack, and we're asking the community's help.
This morning, we're continuing spotlighting Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. It is quite mysterious, and it has the country on pins and needles. She was last seen on January 31st and reported missing the following day after she didn't show up for her church service. Her family has been pleading to the public for any signs of the 84-year-old. Scripps News has more.
The search for Nancy Guthrie now stretching into a second week.
Every hour is more difficult. There's no question about that.
A looming ransom deadline to pay a potential kidnapper is rapidly approaching. According to Scripps News Tucson station K-Gun, a ransom note it received demanded $6 million in Bitcoin by 5 p.m. on Monday. Guthrie's children released another video Saturday on social media, appearing to suggest they'd pay that ransom.
We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
Investigators searching for Guthrie were on the scene at her home again over the weekend and searched an underground tank on Sunday. They also seized a car from her home on Friday. Then, on Saturday evening, multiple Pima County Sheriff's deputies spent time inside daughter Annie Guthrie's home and appeared to collect evidence. That home was the last place Nancy Guthrie spent time eating dinner and playing games with family before her disappearance from her own home.
They're being more thorough. They're going back into the crime scene. They're looking again, and they're looking at everywhere that they possibly could have missed.
Investigators say they still have not identified any suspects, persons of interest, or vehicles connected to this case. On Monday afternoon, Savannah Guthrie posted a new video to social media asking for the public's help.
We believe our mom is still out there. We are at an hour of desperation.
Scripps News reporting there for us. Now, let's bring back in our power panel. In Tucson, Arizona, the creator and the host of Road Patrol Live, John DePietro. In the studio with me, private investigator J.P. Miller. Joining us remotely, retired NYPD detective Mike Alcazar, as well as private investigator Manuel Gomez. Great to have you all talking about this awful case. So let's start with the last point that JP made in our last segment, that we don't even know if Nancy Guthrie is still in America right now. I mean, what are the odds she is someplace else? Mike Alcazar, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on that question?
I mean, I'm sure that's definitely a possibility that the FBI is entertained. Being the home, the residence is close to the border, they could easily probably secreted her out of the country and then transport her somewhere else. So that's definitely an avenue that I would investigate.
Mm-hmm. Manuel, tell me, what do you think the odds are that she's still in Arizona?
I think the odds are about 95%. And the reason why I say that is because, again, when you look at the facts of this case, fact one, this case, there was no breaking and entry in this case. Fact two, there's no indicator anywhere in this house that nothing was broken in so they can access the home, which tells me right there that somebody, either a family member or a close friend, knew how to get into this home. Okay? Two, The fact that the blood droplets in front of the house were the size, some of them, of a dime, tells me that she was bleeding profusely because her clothes would absorb the blood, and the fact that the amount of blood seen tells me that this woman was severely hurt. And as you can see, some of them are the size of a dime and even a penny. I'm sorry. I believe this woman is dead. And what we need to do is go back to the digital footprint of not only the mother, but Savannah Guthrie, to see if anybody was sending her text messages, emails stating that they hated any broadcast she did or they had any animosity to her. These are the things that need to be examined. And one last thing, since they went back to the sister's house, and this is something I don't like to use, but it's something I think would put pressure. They should do a lie detector test on Savannah Guthrie's brother-in-law and on the sister-in-law to see what's going on, because they've had evidence in that house that they were photographing, and that's suspicious to me.
Manuel, all excellent points you made. Regarding the digital communications that may or may not be there directed toward Savannah Guthrie and her mom with any animosity. JP Miller, I'll go to you on that point to expound a bit. Yeah, where do you go with respect to Savannah if you're looking for whether there's a potential tie there?
Well, if you could get cooperation from her, which it sounds like you could, go through her communication, go through her cell phone, go through her iCloud, go through her emails. And if, just like her, but any of the other family members, if anyone's not willing to do such.
Oh, no, I meant Savannah, so let's say someone who maybe messages her on Facebook or says, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think they should go through every single one of those.
Sure.
Look at any threats or possible issues that may have occurred. Even someone that was maybe even trying to pursue her romantically, some types of fans, so to speak, could be a possibility. But right now they need to really focus in on what communication I think would be directly related to all of them.
Yeah.
Not just rule one of them out.
JP, do you think we could have an act of terrorism going on here? I mean, you've served in our military. Is it possible that this is a terroristic act?
Well, I mean, statistically speaking, and this is the FBI's own statistics, roughly from like 2015, but most violent crime that we see in the United States is directly related to whether it's domestic terrorism or transnational terrorism. It's between 34 to upwards of 90%. I know that's kind of a vast distance range, but think of it like this: a more populated area like Tucson or Atlanta or Miami, they're going to have a higher concentration of criminal enterprises. So this is close to Tucson. So I would estimate that the crime rate and the enterprises are operating there. So it is a possibility, statistically speaking.
Yeah, boy, that's fascinating, JP. Thank you for that. John DePietro, I want to go to you, please, regarding the crime scene and what you're seeing. You're outside of Nancy Guthrie's home right now. A couple moments ago, we were talking about the blood that was seen on the porch. I'm curious, is everything still taped off, or can you get close to the porch to see if it's still there?
You can't, Julie. They initially had the crime scene tape up. They took it down, which I think now they realize was a mistake. There is the sheriff right behind me. The sheriff says that it's the family that has requested that, but the police presence is here keeping everyone at bay. But this crime scene was opened up, and there's also speculation, the sister's house, that's where Nancy Guthrie was last with that Saturday night dinner. That also should have been roped off as a crime scene. That wasn't done. I've covered cases, Julie, where the crime scene was a month where they sat on a house. This time they haven't done that. I'm also curious, Julie, Savannah is local. She's staying right near here. I have an idea, I'm not gonna say where it is, but where she's staying. I'm curious to see if we're gonna actually see her hold a briefing. First, she started these messages with the two siblings. Now it's just her alone. She's very media savvy. We know she wants to keep attention on the case. Very curious, Savannah's local. If she's actually going to do a press briefing and try to tell people what she knows. But as far as the house, again, it sits on about an acre of property. The sheriff is 24/7 now. The panel is right. There definitely were some mistakes. I'm curious to see what direction they're going to pivot, but make no mistake about it. There's no way you're walking from here. There's cactuses everywhere. I got poked like a porcupine yesterday. It's very, very barren. It's also pitch black. Unless someone, this would have to be like the Venezuelan raid where they got Maduro to come in and extricate her from this house. It's very, very bizarre. I'm curious to see if law enforcement will say that the ransom note was in fact a dead end. Was she taken? Is that what this is all about? I think right now the media truly wants to hear from the sheriff, from the FBI, maybe even Savannah herself.
Right. You know, that's not a bad idea. Why not? You know, as she indicated yesterday, she is pleading for anyone's help. And maybe by continuing, as you said, John, to get in front of this and continue those pleas for help, that it will be effective. Who knows? John, you mentioned the darkness, and we're just starting to see the sun coming up where you are. It's in the 6 a.m. hour where you are. Here we're headquartered in the east, and it's in the 8 a.m. hour. And if it weren't for your light shining on you all this hour, I would think it'd be very hard to see. Would you kind of describe just how dimly lit it is?
You know, when I was growing up, we used to go to Green Hill and there were no street lights or anything like that. It's like that. They have it because the stargazing is incredible. But when you're coming around here, if you don't know your way around, you're not talking about huge signs. There's no street lights. It is absolutely pitch black. It's a desert. That's where we are. Where's the desert? The Catalina Hills is different than parts of Tucson, especially downtown where the convention center is. You know, there's more lighting. Up here, the people like it that way. But again, you would really have to either be a local or know your way around because there's a lot of blind alleys. And again, I know it sounds not to be redundant, but no street lights. There's also, once you get up into these Catalina Hills, it becomes a little bit of a maze. So could someone have had like a sand buggy or something? You talk about an 84-year-old woman. There's no way you're walking out of here. As I've been riding around here at night, you never see anyone walking. If anything, it's filled with coyotes. It is truly the desert. So this is either highly orchestrated or someone who's a local who knew exactly where they were going, knew how they were going to get out of here, knew her movements. I still find the whole element of the garage door a little bit odd, but I'd be curious to see today what type of communication we hear from the sheriff, who initially was very active and now has gone silent.
Excellent points and really great reporting. As always, John DePietro, thank you so much. Big thanks also to private investigators J.P. Miller and Manuel Gomez and retired NYPD Detective Mike Alcazar. Looking forward to seeing you all soon. We're going to hit a break, my friends. When we come back, we're going to take you to New Jersey. The Mansion murders trial rolls on with the defendant's daughter. Did she tip the scales of justice? We'll talk about it next.
This week,
previewing each day's proceedings in the murder trial of Dale Warner, plus the latest developments in the abduction of Nancy Guthrie.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
A deadly school shooting.
I just started hearing gunshots.
Now, the father of the alleged shooter is on trial.
Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son to possess a weapon.
The Gave My Son a Gun murder trial. This week on Court TV.
Order.
Welcome back. Now for what's tipping the scales of justice, we're going to New Jersey for the murder trial of Paul Caneiro. Prosecutors say that he murdered his brother and his sister-in-law and their 2 children. These are all the victims you see there on the right side of your screen. And there's Paul Caneiro, the defendant, on the left. Prosecutors say money was the motivation behind it. He's proclaiming his innocence. And his oldest daughter, Katie, testified in his defense. Let's watch.
Moving on to the morning of the 20th. What's the first thing you remember?
The first thing I remember was my dad, he was like shaking me awake, and he was saying that the house was on fire and we needed to get out.
So from the time that you were exiting your house and you saw your dad going toward the garage, to the time that you saw the garage door coming up and the light and the Porsche coming out, how much time had passed?
Under a minute.
At that time, did you ever see your dad holding a gas can?
No.
Did you ever see your dad trying to light any fires?
No.
Did your dad smell like gasoline?
No. And at that time, my dad started screaming and crying that my uncle's house was on fire. Then he got a text from Ben saying that he needed to go.
And why were you trying to leave?
Because no one was answering me. I wanted to make sure they were okay.
What do you think? Do you think the daughter's testimony will tip the scales of justice in any way for her dad? Let's bring in our legal analyst guest this hour. Attorney Randolph Rice is on the program. Randolph, good morning to you. Your thoughts on Katie Caneiro and what her testimony might mean to the jury?
Well, good morning, Julie. I don't know that Katie Caneiro is going to tip the scales of justice, because she's really just placing sort of these innuendos about things that really don't have a solid base of evidence. For example, this line of questioning: Did you see your father light the house? Well, of course not. The house was already on fire. Did your father smell like gasoline? Those things really just don't sway jurors. You know, you need to have something more concrete, more solid, if you're going to get them to sort of jump to the defense side here.
Mm-hmm. You know, Randolph, I think it's a try. It's a good try, right? But at the end of the day, as you said, it may not mean much for him. What do you think could mean more for him? Do you think his own testimony? What are your thoughts?
Well, if the defense really thought that there was somebody else that did this, they would have hired their own private investigators. And they're all along, their theory, or at least the theory they're pushing, is that the other brother, Corey, was the one, or could have been the one, that did this. And if they thought that that was the case, then a private investigator who went and did a full investigation into Corey's actions and behaviors leading up to that date would probably be their best evidence in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Looking at Paul Caneiro, he's pretty poker-faced throughout this whole trial. We have seen him get emotional at a couple different points, and one of those points was yesterday with his daughter and seeing her getting emotional. Randolph, what do you think his reactions mean to the jury?
I don't think his reactions are having a lot of sway with the jury. And what I do think he's crying about right there, or he's showing emotion, that he's probably realizing that he's put his daughter in this horrible position to be on the stand talking about the death of his brother and their kids and wife. And he's probably thinking, gosh, maybe he is thinking, maybe he doesn't. He probably doesn't have anything in his soul right now, but he's thinking, man, I've hurt even my daughter here in this situation, and maybe feeling some emotion for that.
Mm-hmm, right. And she's going to be back on the stand this morning, Randolph, as you know, more testimony to come. And of course, the all-important cross-examination, which I want to ask you, because you've been a prosecutor, you know what that's like. When they get the chance to cross her, how do you think they should handle it?
I would go in fast and hard and get out quick, because I don't think she added anything. And the longer you keep her on that stand, the potential you have for a redirect, if you raise something that the defense thinks, hey, the prosecution sort of grabbed onto this, let's go with it and let's keep presenting evidence that maybe the jury says, there might be some reasonable doubt here.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Randolph, you're going to stay with us as Court TV Live kicks off in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, my friends at home, for watching the program this morning. If you like this episode of Opening Statements, you can watch it again. We pop them up every weekday morning for you there on our website. Just go to courttv.com, click on the Shows tab.